So when you first heard, I want to give you a new name, you understood it as like a legal change in my name. No.
Mm.
Okay.
I did have not have any designs on changing my name. That wasn't even a thought.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is really an effort. Everything that I'm doing is trying to help you connect more with God. And so, in this conversation that I have with Eden Jersak, she is married to Bradley Jersak, which I interviewed before. And this dynamic duo of a couple, they have just been on the journey of connecting with God longer than I have. And so I'm just here to be able to give you access to the conversations that help you deepen your own relationship with God. And it's really fun for me to witness the experiences that people have because in this one, which I kind of teased at the beginning, as well as the thumbnail of this video, is that Eden didn't used to have the name Eden. Before she was called Edith. And the thing that, because I've taught and I have learned from others that God has a name for each one of us, that there's a specific name for you, that much like Jesus called James and John the sons of thunder and he changed Peter's name or Simon's name to Peter, there is this element of God calling us into something and giving us an identity about it. Now, identity is really a central figure to lifelong transformation. Because if I can choose to be someone new or receive a new name, then with that new name comes a new way of living. And every time that we are called by that new name or that we remember that that's what we're called, we choose a different way of living. So it's really important, but I'd never heard anyone actually legally changing their name until Eden came along. So you'll hear a little bit about her experience and that story in this experience, as well as other awesome stories. But just the whole conversation was really instructive and really helpful for understanding how do we really deepen our relationship with Christ? How do we have this conversational relationship with God and operate our lives in following the nudges, the promptings, the little things that come to help us live out where God is leading us. So there's there's some really cool stories that I want you to make sure you listen to the end. Really miraculous kind of things that we just can't explain except for attributing it to God. So I'm excited for you to dig into this, but without further ado, we're just going to dive in. You'll just hear Eden share a quick insight, and then you'll just hop along for the conversation. So here we go.
I think more than anything, God wants us to normalize a conversation with them, right?
Hmm.
That yes, it's mystical. Yes, it's mysterious, but it's also super normal. And if we can do that instead of having an entirely different language and way of going about it to our normal conversations we have in our day to day, it becomes more of a rhythm in our life rather than some sort of discipline that we have to have and that kind of obligates us to a conversation that is mostly one-sided.
Yeah. How did you get to the place of normalizing that relationship?
When Bradley and I were coming into this, and this would have been in the 90s, I don't know exactly how that happened, but we did just start asking questions. If God is talking, if God is in a willing mood to have a conversation, which was what it felt like at the time, then let's ask some questions. And that became our way of listening. Part of the essential thing that came from that was having a meeting place. That really normalized prayer, listening prayer for us. I'd have horrible friendships with people if I only went by I'm out and about and I bump into them. Oh, that's cool. We're
Yeah.
gonna have a little chat now, right?
Yeah.
Usually, if I want to meet with someone, we establish a time and a place that we're going to do this because
Yeah.
it can't be more random than that. Not with some sort of a relationship that has any sort of essence to it. So we started doing meeting places, and that was really helpful. We did meeting places in context to healing prayer, where it was something had harmed us, a situation or a person, or you name it. We would start with a meeting place where Jesus was in the meeting place with us. We weren't going into some dark corner and then scrambling and asking, Jesus, where are you? Where are you? No, the presence of Jesus was with us from the start. And then that, for me, just translated into the everyday. It's like, there was one particular instance where this really got hammered into me in a lovely, gentle way. I was concerned about something that I was going to have to participate in completely out of my comfort zone. And I could already imagine myself needing healing prayer for what I was about to do. And I thought, wait a minute. If I already know I'm going to need some care after this and some healing, why would I not engage with Jesus about this beforehand and find out where Jesus will be with me in this moment, in this particular circumstance? And I listened and I said, Jesus, I don't even know what the place around me is going to look like, but this is what I'm imagining. Just show me where you'll be, because that's where I'm going to keep looking in this situation. And so it actually involved 3 interviews. Bradley took one, we together took one, and then the third one was supposed to be me by myself. And Bradley knew how afraid I was of this interview.
Yeah.
And so at the last minute, Bradley's saying, listen, Eden, I'll just sit in with you. And if it gets a little tough or whatever, I'll help you out. And I said, no, actually, I'm good. I know exactly where Jesus is. And it was this huge moment where I'm like, oh, I don't have to let the world take me out and my fear hold me back, because I already know where Jesus is in this moment. And that really helped me learn, like, the day to day, you know what? I've got a really busy day today. Jesus, from the start, I need to know where you're going to be, or what I need to know from you about today.
Mhm.
And that has allowed me to live like pretty connected life. And the way that's affected me is going through a form of deconstruction where I was never in peril of losing Jesus, and or my faith in general, or the church for that matter. None of those things were part of the process that I went through in my faith journey, because I knew exactly where Jesus was. One of the things that, kind of having the listening prayer dynamic going around in my head and heart during the day, is if I'm leaving the house, even if I'm not leaving the house, I'm trying to live with my eyes open so that I'm observing things. So I'm not disconnected from the people or the things that are around me. And so that means that when I notice someone, you know what, maybe they just look really lovely today. Maybe I don't even know them. They're a stranger, but they've got it going on. If I'm connecting with them, if I'm walking by them, I'll just go, wow, you look fantastic today. Who wouldn't want to hear that?
Yeah.
It's a simple thing. It's, I see you made effort. And you know what? It really turned out. Way to go. That's a blessing on someone else. And I know that may sound like really worldly, like we're looking for some sort of God dust to come down on someone. But I think it has to be that practical.
Now, you have written a book, and maybe you could share a little bit about what brought this book about and some of your experience with it.
Sure. So the year I was turning 40, I went through this 9-month long process of listening to God, hearing that he was going to call me by a new name,
Hmm.
and then slowly that unraveling and opening up about 9 months after that with me actually changing my name, which that's like the super condensed version
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
9-month process. What was amazing about it was that process ended with a series of dreams that I would have each night, and I would write out each morning and kind of process with what God was doing. And the imagery from those dreams was that Jesus came into my our backyard, like on a bulldozer, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
backhoe, and just standing there frozen. Oh, and Jesus's head pokes out of the cab, and he's, so we're going to do a little work here. If you stay where you are, this will probably crush you. But if you get in the cab with me, I think it'll be fine. I'm not like super smart, but I'm also not dumb. So I all the way to the cab. And then night after night, we were digging up this yard. And of course, it was a picture of my heart. And
Hmm.
we were finding treasures that had been buried, and we were finding pain that was buried, and we were finding things that people had thrown over the fence that didn't belong to me, but somehow got to stay. Right.
Hmm.
And so in that process, it just became very apparent to me that God had something up. And at the end of this, that culminated with me changing my name. And then Bradley had been on a trip, and he came home and he goes, I know what my next book is going to be. And I said, oh, cool. What is it? He goes, you're going to write it. And I'm, oh, I don't like where this is going. So the concept of the book was we would ask God 40 questions, and usually quite personal, either of God or for us. And Bradley takes a page to just tee up the question so that people can understand why we would ask this.
Yeah.
Then I would go into prayer, listening for the answer, my answer to this
Yeah.
question. And that all came out of the process that had lasted that whole year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, earlier, what kind of led up to this, you mentioned that you turned 40. I don't know if this is something that you just did for your birthday, but what's the importance of the 9 months? Is that like a rebirth?
It was something that I noticed looking back. So
Yeah.
in January, I was part of a Bible study in another church.
Yeah.
And the woman who was leading it was just fantastic. And so it was the very beginning, start of January. And at the end of the class, Brad had taught this church how to do listening prayers, and they were familiar with it. And she asked at the end of the class, let's listen for what Jesus might have for us this year. And so as I listened, I heard Jesus say, I'm going to call you by a new name. Now, I'm super conservative about running with something like that. I
Wow.
certainly wasn't thinking about changing my name right away. I just thought it'd be like a term of endearment, right? Something just Jesus and I, or something that kind of changed me, even like about who I am and stuff. So this was, I had just turned 39. My birthday's at the end of December. So I'm like, I'm open for this whole year. Okay. But I had shared it with someone else, this, what I had heard. And she's, oh, I wonder what your new name's going to be. And just ran with it.
Yeah.
And she became a very dear friend, but she found Psalm 1 in the message. And it says, you are planted like a tree in Eden. And she showed me that. I'm like, I have no idea where there's a name in that sentence. Like I was just blind to it.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's Eden. And I'm like, really? So I held that to myself. I told Bradley, and Bradley right away was like, so you're going to change your name? And I said, what? Are you kidding me? But then the rest of the year and the rest of this journey and these dreams all came about. And during the time of the dreams, that was when, as I was journaling, Jesus called me Eden. And I realized, oh, all along it was, I will call you by a new name. Like other people were calling me by a new name, but it was Jesus who had said he would.
Yeah.
That's when I realized, oh, okay, this is going to happen. And so by the time I was 40, I had legally changed my name, which was so out of any box I have ever been. It's just like crazy. But there was biblical precedence for it in that Abram became Abraham and Sarah became Sarah and Saul became Paul. And my name had been Edith and I became Eden.
Oh, cool.
And so it was a very similar, like you gave everyone one syllable to get it right. It wasn't like a different name. What was lovely about this was when my name was Edith, I often got, oh, I have a great auntie whose name is Edith. Like,
Yeah.
always referencing someone old.
Yeah.
Of course, now that name is a little more common again. But now when I say my name, people go, I love that name. That's really nice. And so for me, embracing the change, the name change, was like putting my very own endorsement, what God had been doing, like accepting this and taking it on and going, okay, I'm embracing everything you gave me this year and all that is yet to come.
Yeah. So when you first heard, I want to give you a new name, you understood it as like a legal change in my name. No. Okay.
So when I first heard it, it was like just a term of endearment, just something between God and I, sweetheart or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I not have any designs on changing my name. That wasn't even a thought.
At what point did it change? Where you actually said, wow, okay, this is
So
like,
people, I told the story a little bit along the way. People started calling me Eden, a few, and then Brad was using Eden. But it was when Jesus said, he called me Eden while I was journaling, that I realized, oh, this is for real. Like,
yeah.
this is actually happening. So it was that moment where I'm like, okay, this is going down.
Yeah. What have you noticed is different with a new name?
I think just how I participate in life in general is different. And I think it's because the process towards changing my name was a year of healing for me. And where Edith could observe something and come to a swift and complete judgment, Eden can observe the same thing and be curious about what God is up to in this moment instead of coming to the judgment. And I think that's not because I'm somehow more superior. I think it's because I experienced the mercy and the grace of Jesus. And because of that, I'm able to move in that much easier. Edith didn't know that side of God. I grew up in a very conservative church. I asked Jesus into my heart nearly every Sunday when the children's group. I never went forward because that would be too embarrassing.
Oh, sure.
And shame-based personality and all that stuff, all of that has been taken care of. I'm very secure with my relationship with Jesus. I know where I belong. The shame is gone. If I feel anything like shame, I'm like looking around like, where did that come from?
Oh, interesting.
I can just shed it very quickly. So those are just interesting things, right? Like how changing your name, but it wasn't. The changing my name was the seal on what Jesus had done in that year.
Yeah. There are habit books and there's also just just the teaching of how powerful identity is. And I can't help but just make this connection of our names, they're central. They're so central to our identity and how we see ourselves. And so part of me is just thinking, what if I really started to identify as what God calls me?
Yeah.
And for me, within the past 6 months or so, Lord said, hey, you are my Christ bringer. And even more recently, the label of wingman, which has its own little fun aspect to it. One thing to receive a name, and it's another thing to change your name and to have people like call you that. And it's this daily reminder. So I don't know if there's anything else that you would touch on that, but I just find it fascinating and important when it comes to an identity level shift.
Yeah. I think so we were part of a church Brad was leading. And so I was asking 100 or more people to make this change with me. Some of these people had known me since I was a kid. And I realized this is a big ask. I'm asking a lot of these people and my family. And they so embraced me in that. Like it felt like they were the cheerleaders of this whole process for me. And they just, yeah, it was lovely to have them come around. And to my parents, that was a bit of a tall order for them. But I recognized that. And I even gave them like an out. I said, you don't have to call me Eden. And I'd love your blessing. But I get that this might be hard. I just want you to know I'm not rejecting the name you gave me. I'm just embracing something new that God has done in my life. And they were excellent. And my dad is 90 years old and he calls me Eden. And my mom jumped on it. She's passed, but she jumped on it a little quicker. She was that was so encouraging. And I think that's part of why it's important when we are experiencing things with Jesus and we're hearing things from him to share it with other people so that they can embrace it with you and embrace you with what you're learning and experiencing. When we just keep it to ourselves, it's easy to let it slip and forget about it and not have credibility. But if you have people who are going, man, you told that story and it just keeps coming back up. How are things going? Tell me, like, where are things at? And it keeps you in a little bit of accountability and also builds that relationship with that person.
What's your daily practice, or what do you find yourself in terms of applying yourself in relationship with God?
I do try to start the day with, where are you going to meet me? Or I might start with, wow, I'm already exhausted. I need you, Jesus, to order my steps today, to give me a pathway. And if I'm heading towards something that you're not a part of, I just think it's a good idea, or I'm wasting my time and energy on, I need you to just call me back, bump me back into line with what you're doing. And I'll give you an example of how that works. I was feeling the need to clean the house and I was in a mood to get it done, right? And I was actually listening to which is the next room to do. So I was at least on that track somehow, like doing that. But all of a sudden, I'm feeling like I think I'm supposed to sit down. So I sit down, and as I sit down, my sister calls me, and I hear Jesus saying to me, "You're done. Nothing else needs doing today. You're done." My sister calls. I answer the phone. She goes, "I'm in town. Can we please go for lunch?" And you know what? 5 minutes before, I'd say, "No, I'm on a tear. I'm getting things done. I'm not stopping this." But because I just was trying to stay in tune with what God was calling me to, I recognized, oh, this is the next room to take care of. You're going to go in with your sister, you're going to have some lunch, and you're going to hear what she needs to say today. And so I know that sounds like, maybe it sounds trite or like just too simplistic, but it works for me because I'm still staying connected with Jesus. I'm not getting to the end of the day and going, that was a terrible day, Jesus. Where were you? I might have had a terrible day, but not because I wasn't aware of where Jesus was. And that's the difference that I have in having a process like this, is just always being aware of that. And then maybe I come up and I'm hitting a wall for some reason. At that point, I can just say, Jesus, this is a wall and that hurt. What do I need to know here? Oh, turn right. Can I tell you a really fun listening story?
Yeah, please do.
This is, it's one of my favorite stories because it's just so strange. I was going to China with a group of women and just a small group, and we needed to get our Chinese visas. I drove into Vancouver with everyone's passports and all the paperwork, and I went to the Chinese consulate to get our visas, only to find out that I had arrived too early. Like there was 3 more days we needed to wait because they only last a certain period. And I had arrived too early. It's an hour's drive. I like driving. That's not the end of the world, but I'm like, oh, wasted a few hours here today. A few days later, I drive in again. And this time I come into the consulate, and standing at the door is a Chinese soldier in full uniform. And he stops me and he says, I'm sorry, we have all of the work we can do today already. Like all the people who are here will get taken care of, but we can't take in more. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Another drive? And then I just went, Jesus, what do I need to know here? And I looked at him and I said, is there another way I can do this? And he says, I'm not allowed to tell you that. And I thought, oh, what a curious answer. Is this like, what? And so I looked at him and I said, okay, if I go down the elevator and out the front door, should I turn to the right or to the left? And I thought, am I really asking a Chinese soldier this question? But it was just coming from Jesus for sure. And he goes, oh, I would turn to the right. I would walk to the corner where the white spot is. That's a restaurant here in Canada. I would cross the street. I would turn right again, and I would look for the star in the window. And I'm like, okay, let me reiterate. Like, my head just blowing off. And so I gave that back to him, and that's correct. And I said, thank you. And we're like staring in each other's eyes the whole time because it was just so bizarre. I walk out of the building, I turn right, I cross the street, I turn right, I see this store with a star in it, and it's a print shop. And so I go inside and I go to the counter and I say, is there any chance you process Chinese visas here? And the one goes, oh, yes. I go in there every morning before anybody else is allowed in, and I process the visas, and then I mail them back to the people who have brought them to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? She goes, oh, it's way faster than going in there yourself. And it was not expensive. And within 5 days, we had our Chinese visas. And I thought, I would never have thought of those questions or recognized the invitation that his, I can't tell you, response was, except that I trusted that Jesus was up to something. And I'm like, I came home, I could not stop laughing at what had happened, what had transpired, just out of the box.
Yeah.
I think if we have some curiosity and if we're engaging with where is Jesus and what's he telling me and who's this about, our lives can be so much richer and so much love than we ever imagined.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade this for anything. And I think it's because I'm never wondering if something horrible happens. I'm not wondering, Jesus, or God, why are you doing this to me? I don't deserve this. I'm like a straight up person. Please. That's never the issue for me. I'm even when the horrible things happen, I'm like, okay, I really need to know where you are.
Mm.
I get it. Like life happens and I'm not immune or somehow special that I shouldn't experience hardships. But if I know that you're with me, I can handle this. I can do this.
That's so awesome. When you went through the process of the questions in the book, were there any questions that did stand out to you or that made a large impact on you?
Yeah, there's a big one. There was a question. Brad was only giving me the question in the morning. I would get up early before the kids were up.
Yeah.
I would get up early and then I would see what the question was for the day and I would do my listen and do my journal. It wasn't like I had a whole bunch of time to, oh yeah, I totally know where I'm going to take this. It was like, no, Jesus is going to take this.
Mm.
The fourth day was, who am I to you? So I'm asking Jesus, who am I to you? And in the process, the meeting place was like over a chai latte. And we're sitting in a coffee shop. And someone walks by and Jesus introduces me as his friend. And I realize, oh, I don't think I realized I was Jesus's friend. As the encounter continued, I said to Jesus, you think I'm your friend? I'm your friend? Is that?
Yeah.
And yeah, I meet my friends for drinks, for a cuppa, and like, we can just hang out. I love this. This is great. And I said, when did that happen that we became friends? Because it's curious to me. And he said, we became friends when you stopped being good and started being real. I realized that the shame-based personality was wrapped up in being good. And when I wasn't good, then I was ashamed. But being real and authentic was what was required of me. And that's what allowed my friendship with Jesus to happen because I wasn't always trying to tick boxes.
Yeah.
With Jesus. And so that was a really big thing for me, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else that are questions or experiences that you just feel the need to share?
I think it's important to have touchstones, touch points around your house that call you to engage with Jesus. So I have some friends who are going through cancer treatments right now. And so I just asked them, if you had one word that I could use to pray for you, what would it be? And so I have symbols in my house. So one is a cork from a bottle of wine that I don't know why we have it, not because we don't drink wine, but because it's a special kind of cork. And I'd been part of a group with him, and he had that kind of cork with him. And that was his symbol of what God was doing with him. And I have that same cork on right by my sink, and it's my reminder to pray for him. Then another friend said, I want peace. And so I have a little rock that I'd written peace on that is by one of my plants in my kitchen that I regularly see. And just little things like that that draw us to be reminded to pray for our friends and our loved ones. And I usually don't have a big, long, wordy sort of prayer. I'm just like, peace for them, mercy,
Yeah.
healing for them, but it connects me to them. And
No.
and it makes I have a mother-in-law who is exceptionally good at praying, and she prays through her extended family every day by name. It's a long list. That's not how I'm wired.
Yeah.
Wired visually to see things that will draw me to remember a person and to pray for them. And I think we need help like that, like just little places in our day where we're reminded, oh yeah, that person, I want to pray for them at peace. mercy, love, hope, presence, God's presence with them. And that is such a helpful form of prayer for me, for my own self. But then also to be able to text them after and just say, hey, I was just praying for you. Hope you're having a good day or whatever. Nobody minds getting something like that, right? A message like
Yeah.
that where it's, you were thinking about me. That's amazing. So that's, I think that's just really important. And again, it normalizes conversations with God.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know if you'd be open, but would you be willing to end this with a prayer?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Jesus, you are our friend. And so thank you for accompanying us on this journey in this life. Would you bless us with an understanding and a knowing of just how close you are with us through each day? Open our eyes to see you and our hearts to experience what you have for us each day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.